I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call. Alicia, will you please do roll call for us?
Jamie?
Present.
Kevin?
Here.
John?
Here.
Jason's absent at the moment. Myself here. And Donna's absent.
Okay. Thank you, Alicia. Announcements. The next school board meeting. The next regular school board meeting will be on Monday, June 11th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Glencoe-Silver High School Community Room, 443-444. Acknowledgements. Do you have any acknowledgements?
Well, most of the stuff we'll be talking about once again in our reports, but I just want to officially acknowledge the class of 2020, and we'll talk a little bit more about graduation here in a little bit, about the ins and outs of everything. But I think it's important for us at the board meeting, at the board level, to acknowledge this class and to welcome them to the commencement ceremony that we'll be having, but also then to wish them nothing but the best as they move on into their next phase of life.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to also acknowledge and continue to acknowledge all of our GSL staff members. Once again, this distance learning is quite an experience for all of us. And I think it goes without saying that we're very appreciative of the staff that we have at all levels, as well as contracted services too. And I'd like to acknowledge all of the students and the families for their patience and their support in their children's distance learning experience. Thank you. Public input relating to the agenda, first call. Public input relating to the agenda, second call.
Back to the announcements. I don't think the date of that of the next board meeting is correct. Because I
Okay.
think that's a Thursday.
That is correct. It should be June 8th.
8th.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Third call and final call for public input relating to the agenda. Okay, just to acknowledge the announcements one more time then, the next school board meeting for clarification, the next regular school board meeting will be on Monday, June 8th, 2020 at 7 p.m. in the Glencoe-Silver High School Community Room 443-444. Thanks, Alicia, for catching that. Reports and presentations, none at this time. Administrators and committee reports. Business Manager Sanders, would you like to do your report?
Yes, thank you, Jamie. Just a couple of updates for you tonight. I first wanted to touch on cash flow projections. We talked about this a little bit a couple weeks ago. Since then, we've found out from McLeod County that they did not delay or allow any delaying of the tax payments that were due on May 15th. As far as the penalties, they decreased their penalties by half, but they were still taxes were still due, but they have up until October to pay them, but they would still pay a penalty, but it was reduced to half of what it would be normally for their certain parcel. Sibley County did delay their payments, or not their payments, their penalties, so there wouldn't be a penalty imposed on people if they weren't able to pay their taxes by May 15th. As of this afternoon, I contacted McLeod County, and they have actually received 90% of the taxes that were due, which is higher than what they've seen last spring. So they're doing really well as far as collecting of their taxes. So I think the way they put things in place worked really well for not only the schools, but the townships, the cities, anybody that collects some of that revenue that comes off of the county taxes. And then Sibley County, I didn't get an update today, but as of last Wednesday, they were, for our school district, they were at 68% collected. GFW and Sibley East schools were at a little lesser percent collected for their school district. So again, for Sibley County, we don't get as many dollars from them. So knowing McLeod County was at 90% was a good feeling to know that that money will be coming in and we won't have a lot of deferred taxes when that money starts rolling in. Regarding the state aid shifts, nothing at this point. As you know, I've mentioned that we'll probably down the road be looking at some shifts where the state borrows the money from the schools to balance the state budget. From what I've learned since then, I don't think the governor has the authority to implement a shift without legislative approval. Now, in this day and age, I think things can change quite often. That, it sounds like there might even be a special session that might be looked at. But at this point, our projections are, we don't think that would probably happen for FY21, but probably for FY22 after the legislators come back into session next winter. So we'll kind of wait and see on that. But what I've done with working with PMA, we have kind of ran through every scenario possible regarding our cash flow. And I'm not talking fund balance, just cash flow. We want to make sure we have cash that we can pay the bills. So we have ran scenarios to see what it would look like if the state shifts to a 70-30, a 60-40. And at this point, as long as the taxes are coming in, we don't see any point in the next 2 years where we would have to borrow money. So that's really good news. We might have to pull a little bit of money out of investments if something would happen in the shifts earlier. By next summer, we might have to relook at how the investments. But right now, we are looking really good as far as cash flow. Now, fund balance changes because that depends on how that money comes in. You record all that money, but it could change what the fund balance looks like at any close of the year. So we'll keep watching that. But at this point, rest assured, cash flow, we're in good shape, and we'll keep monitoring that as we go along. It's just nice to be able to look at those different runs and know where we're actually coming with reviewing different scenarios.
Michelle, can I ask one quick question? When you say, and I'm familiar back in 2008, when 2009, somewhere in the area when we did that, the state did that. Eventually, we received the money. Is that correct? Let's say they do a 70-30. They give you 70% of the money, and then 30%. Eventually, do we get that 30%, or are you talking 70-30, where we're not going to get that 30% at all?
No, we always get the money.
Okay.
The state is obligated; they have to pay us that money. So it happens in a couple different ways. Either you get it the following year, or as the state budget changes, then they start paying you back a little bit more, all depending on how the state budget looks. There's a lot of pieces that are going to affect that state budget. With businesses not being open, that tax money isn't coming in, so a lot of things are going to play into that. The amount that the federal government is going to subsidize to the states is going to play in, and we don't know what that piece looks like either at this point. But nope, we eventually always get that money. We recognize that money in the fiscal year that it's due to us, and that's why your fund balance should maintain, because you're recognizing it even though it doesn't affect cash flow. That's why I say there's always a difference between cash flow and fund balance.
Yep. Thank you.
As I mentioned, the legislative session, as you know, that ended midnight last night. Don't have a lot of details to that. I know the House sent an omnibus finance bill to the governor, and I haven't seen an update today or if that will happen in the next couple of days. Not a lot on that omnibus bill that jumped out at me, other than just kind of reaffirming what's already in place. I think it needed legislative actions to confirm what they're paying for meal reimbursements and how we're supposed to track special education, pupil transportation, career and tech revenue. So a lot of things we knew we were coming, but it needs legislative action to actually approve all those. So again, I didn't see a lot in that bill yet. I'm sure the attorneys at this point will weed through this, and we'll get more information. They talked a little bit about adjustments, but nothing that I'm noticing for FY21 at this point. So we'll learn more about that. Again, it's just really new yet because of adjourning last night at midnight or whatever time they got done. So probably anticipate a special session because they didn't finish that bonding bill and some of those other things that they need to take care of. So we'll kind of see what happens with that. Update on our projects. As we reported a couple weeks ago, we got going on the projects up at Lakeside. So the bathroom that we're doing that's right across from the office, that's pretty much been totally demoed at this point. And then the 3 classroom ceilings, those ceilings and grid work has all been demoed. And on Friday, I know they had 2 of the classrooms, the new grid work was already up. The custodians had started the painting. So I think that's going to come along pretty quick. They weren't in there today. They were going to, I think, start again on Wednesday. The dust collection system is supposed to be here by next week. That comes like in 3 different shipments, so their target was always right around June 1st to get started on that. And then we're a couple weeks out yet before they'll start on any of the cement work. Food service regarding, as you know, we'll be coming to an end here with the school year. But with this waiver that the schools received, we're allowed to continue that program through June 30th at the same funding rate that we've had. So we are not going to take any break in service, so we'll finish at the end of May. We're going to start right in on June 1st with providing our summer food program. We're going to continue with all the same stops that we currently have. We're just going to make it seamless so parents and families can continue to get that food. The only change we're making is we're going to provide it Monday through Thursday. And on Thursdays when families come, they will be able to pick up their lunch and their meal for Thursday and Friday. So they're still going to get that meal. They'll just get it both on Thursday. That's typically what we've done in the past with our summer food program, is we haven't even had a offering of food service on Fridays because the summer school program is only Monday through Thursday. So this year they're going to get that meal for Friday. They're just going to get it on Thursday. So we're going to kind of monitor that. If our numbers stay up, we're just going to keep all the same stops that we have. If a couple of the stops start dropping way down, we'll kind of reevaluate that. Now, just late this afternoon, I did see a waiver come through. Things are just constantly changing all the time, but it looks like now they are going to allow that application for summer food to continue into August. They did not release what the funding rates will be, the reimbursements rates, so once I know that, it'll help direct us. But for now, we're just going to worry about June, finish up May, get into June, and then we'll reevaluate how things are going from there. Any questions that you might have on, I know that was a lot between cash flow and projects and legislators, so questions?
I just want to acknowledge and thank you for Zooming on the Zoom meeting with the county commissioners. Michelle and I were on that meeting. I think it was the day after we had our school board meeting. And Michelle spoke very eloquently and gave great examples of how the impact of delaying the tax collection would impact GSL as a district. And I just want to acknowledge the nice job that she did, and I want to acknowledge the county commissioners for being willing to listen. I think that they were really coming into that meeting open-minded and really looking at many different angles to the decision that they had to make that particular day. And I think that the words and the story of GSL that Michelle told was very informative and helpful to them in making a decision that was very positive toward GSL. So I want to acknowledge that and thank you for that. And also mention to board members that she was the only I guess business manager, if you will, financial person from any of the 3 districts in McLeod County. And so that was a very important voice to have at the table. So thank you for representing not only GSL, but I think the other stories that obviously would have been equally impactful for the other districts in McLeod County. So thank you for that.
Just one thing, Michelle, on the food program. Are you going to, we're communicating it here, like how are we going to get it out? Are we going to hand something out to the people? I know in Broughton there's about 60, usually 50 to 60 meals. Are we still doing about 1,000 a day?
Yeah, right around 1,000 a day.
Okay.
I know Chris is going to have that ready to go for his next couple updates to parents.
I sent one out today.
You did? Okay.
Yep, and I think Tony will probably, I don't know if he's going to have a flyer that goes out kind of that last week.
I'll say maybe a flyer with that
In
last
with the
week.
lunches,
And,
yeah.
might not be a bad idea. So, and there's a lot of kids utilizing it up
It
in
is.
Broughton, and well, obviously over 1,000 meals. So that's
Yeah,
a good thing.
we've gotten a lot of good positive feedback from families that just are really appreciating it. So, nice variety and something for the kids to look forward to and either walk or ride their bike or however they get it. And we're serving, I think, a big need.
Have we had any concerns with any of our rural families out in the country not being able to make it to the stops or asking for accommodations or?
We've got a couple that we know drive in and pick it up. Yep.
Okay.
Few deliveries
Okay.
to the door, so.
If they've asked, we try to accommodate.
Okay.
They changed the ruling, when it first started, everybody was free, no matter of your eligibility status. They did change that, and if you were doing home deliveries, anybody that was a regular paid family was going to get charged for it. So we kind of, I don't want to say lucked out, but we kind of, it would have been really hard to continue to deliver those, and then now families, oh, by the way, we have to charge you for that. I think the way we've kind of done it, tackled it, has worked out well, and still trying to accommodate some of those that have asked and needed it. He's helping out some daycares, and we've got a few families that maybe come in from the country and they pick up for a couple days at a time, rather than having to come in every day. So Tony's doing, and his staff is doing a great job. Also, we've been utilizing paraprofessionals since the 1st of May that have been helping out in the kitchen to give Tony's staff a little break now before we get into summer. And I think they've really enjoyed being in there and helped out.
They do enjoy it.
Yeah.
And they appreciate Tony.
Yeah. Tony likes to cook, so Tony feeds them well. So that's kind of one of the perks when they get in their help, because it's kind of, Tony, like I said, he likes to cook. This is production. He doesn't like production of putting these bags together. And 1,000 bags a day is a lot of bags. The paraprofessionals have been great. They get the bags all marked, whether it's a breakfast bag or lunch bag. They've been trying to decorate them up so it gives them something to do while they're sitting by the door, monitoring for our child care, and then they have the schedule where, however many are in the kitchen a day. So it's worked well, and then in June, his staff will come back. So. And he's tried to make sure his staff is, he's got 2 different teams, so if somebody would get ill and the rest have to, because they've been exposed, have to go home, he's got his other team that he can bring in. So kind of monitoring that really careful to make sure we can keep it staffed. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Michelle. Principal reports, Mr. Butler.
Yeah. Thank you, Jamie. Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Michelle. I'll highlight a few items on the report. Near the top, you can see our teachers are just finishing the first year of culturally responsive teaching in the brain, the reading and study portion. This summer we'll work more toward implementation for next year, so I'm eager to tell you about that as school resumes next year. You can see toward the middle of the page, the pro team at Lincoln has decided on a theme. And it is going to be, we're all in this together. We believe it has a lot of potential for our youngest kids, and we're eager to get started on that. Lakeside is still working on their theme choice for next year. If you go to the back, the chart, and I believe you've seen this from Mr. Sanju, and it shows our EL caseloads by grade level, and the number of children exited. And you can see there was an increase in the percentage, 18-19 over 17-18, and I attribute that to our teachers having that new literacy tool, Wonders, which is really rich in academic language. So I'm eager to see when test results come in for 19-20. Expecting to see another bump there, but we'll report those as soon as those are known. Minnesota Reading Corps right below, we have been awarded a full-time tutor at Lincoln and a half-time tutor at Lakeside. Remember, that's only for 3rd grade, which accounts for the half-time tutor at Lakeside. Got one addition under title programs that I did not write down, but we're expecting this week to see the CARES money, the additional CARES dollars that GSL will receive, and then I'll work with Michelle and the rest of the admin team to see what the number of dollars will be and what we can do as we're cognizant of what kids are going to need as they come back. One possibility is perhaps a title boot camp in August, but it remains to be seen. We don't know what the number of dollars will be on that, so we'll report on that as well when it's known. You can see down at the bottom the school community partnership. Our current kindergarten registration. We are going to make a welcome video with the kindergarten team as a form of outreach for our incoming kindergarten students. We've got a virtual book fair going, and then one attachment I will bring your attention to, I think is pretty cool. Our our leadership team at Lincoln and Mrs. Keister developed advice for a senior. And you can see the last couple of pages, you see a letter that was sent out to all Lincoln families. And then you can see a template that a kindergartner, a first grader, or a second grader can send out to a graduating senior. And I checked out the bag before I came down, and we do have several in the bag. So it's really, I think it's a great idea. Lots of credit to our leadership team and Mrs. Keister on that. So it'll be a lot of fun. What questions do you have? Thank you.
Thank you for providing the ELL information to us. That was very helpful to see, and it'll be interesting, like you said, to see the freshest data track that you get with the final testing that takes place. So thank you for
You're welcome.
providing that to us.
And on that note, we, you know how we approved the EL position at the high school, we have made an offer to an outstanding candidate. They're now hashing out the numbers, and hopefully they're going to get back to us with a positive acceptance, but we'll see. But it'll be nice to have somebody that will be focused truly on the EL population up at the 7th through 12th grade.
Thank you. Continuing with the principal reports, Mr. Foss.
Good evening. So there's just a number of items I want to talk about here today. Obviously, 2 are going to be big ones, and I saved those to the end, and we can discuss them when we get there. But the first thing I want to draw attention to is we are getting to that time of the year where we're going to be looking at student and staff handbooks. Just giving you guys as a board a heads up that in June we'll come to you with any revisions that we would need for those handbooks. Next one is summer school credit recovery. This is a program that we run 9 through 12, and we historically have partnered with Waconia for this through funding. I'm waiting to talk to Waconia to see what they're going to do on that. We do have a number of options. Our credit recovery system at the 9 through 12 level is run through a program called Edmentum, otherwise known as Plato. And how it works is we assign Edmentum courses to the students, and it's all online. They can do the work and earn credit. We do this during the school year as well, not only during the summer. Typically, we partner with Waconia so that we can have a teacher in the room so that if they have specific questions on math or English or whatever course they're trying to earn credit recovery in, they have a physical teacher there they can ask questions to. Pending on what we can do due to COVID-19 and how the cash flow works, that may need to look a little differently this summer, whereas it would just be assigned and they would be doing it at home. That way there would be no cost associated to the district that way, and we wouldn't be relying on Waconia to reimburse any of the costs that come through the Targeted Services Program. So right now, we're tentatively looking to start that on June 8th. The start date would be June 8th, regardless, just I'm trying to determine if that's going to be in person, which would run from 9 a.m. to noon every day, or if it's solely going to be online, where they would need to contact myself to have tests unlocked or any of the lessons restarted. So that's where we're at with our credit recovery program. Grading is going to be one of the biggest topics that I'm going to talk about tonight. This is what we have put together at the 7 through 12 setting. And this program, or this idea, was put together using guidance from the state. And it was also talked about amongst our Wright County Principals Conference Group. And then it was brought to my senior high and junior high leadership levels to discuss how this works and how we can meet the needs of all of our learners at GSL. And one of the things that I want to preface before I talk about this a little bit is we've been given pretty clear guidance from the state that we need to hold kids harmless during this time because we don't know who is a privileged learner, we don't know who is watching 7 kids at home, we don't know who's a single kid who has a mom and a dad who come home every night and are able to help them. And as most of you guys already know, this time has been an incredible struggle for our students and for our staff and for our parents as we've gone through. And I think this grading system meets the need of everybody, from our high flyers to our students who have been underprivileged during this time. And what we are recommending is that we grade A through C minus with GPA associated with that. So the students who have put in a lot of time and that GPA and those grades mean a lot to them, for their transcript, for their future college entrance, for any sort of scholarship they may be applying for, they would have the GPA associated to reflect the hard work they've put in. What I want to do for the remainders would be a 1% to a 69% would receive a pass, and they would receive credit in that course, but they would not have a GPA associated with the pass. This 1% to 69% would be specific to distance learning. So not the first 2 weeks before we left when we were in person. It would mean that they have had to have been logged into the Google Classroom, they would have had to have been in contact with their teacher, and they would have had to have been submitting some sort of work throughout the school year. Those students who were not logged on, did not join a Google Classroom and have not reached out or responded back to myself or staff who have reached out many, many times would receive an NG or a no grade, and they would receive no credit. Those individuals would then have to retake that course. The thought process behind this is for a number of reasons, as I had stated before. One, I want to hold students harmless. Two, I don't know what their home situation is like. And going into this, I talked to staff way back in March that this was going to be rough. And in doing a lot of home visits and in doing a lot of phone calls, I don't know that I've felt more close than I do now to our student body. And it's extremely sad, some of the situations that our students are in and what they're expected to do on a daily basis, and then trying to complete this all on top. So that is part of why the passing system is 1 to 69%. What I want to speak about specifically before I open this up to questions, because I know some of you might be going, that's very low expectation. And my response to you would be this. A lot of school districts, especially in our Wright County, are leaving it up to teachers' discretion. And in conversations with my senior high and junior high leadership, I didn't want to put the staff into that situation where one staff would be passing a student at a 30% and another staff would be failing a student at a 50%. It just didn't seem right to me. So I wanted to have a definitive number on there that staff could say this is the direction we were given and this is the route that we're going. I do think it meets the needs for all of our students, both high end and low end. And again, when we put this together, we used guidance from the state, we used information from our Wright County principals, and then we talked about it at the senior high and junior high leadership level. We can come back to that because I'm sure you're going to have questions on it, but I do want to speak about the other very large topic that's kind of been ruling my life here for the last few weeks, and that's graduation. As of right now, we are planning on having our graduation ceremony on May 29th. That will be held here in the GSL parking lot at 7:30. This will be a drive-in ceremony. And before I go into kind of details of what this is, and I've shared with you a letter that I intend on sending out tomorrow to all senior families and all senior students, along with a parking grid attached behind that. None of this information has been shared with our seniors yet, with the exception of our senior class officers. In developing this plan, we obviously used the guidance that the state gave us on what we could do. I also put together a Google form and sent it to all of our seniors with options where they could voice what they wanted to do. And in that Google form, it included all options from a parking lot ceremony to postponement to later in the summer or even in the fall to have a ceremony. The results on that came back roughly 2-1 that they wanted to have the ceremony on the 29th with their classmates. Some of the comments that I received on that was that they had entered education together and they want to leave education together regardless of what that looks like. From the information that was gathered on that form, I pulled in a Google Meet session with myself and the 4 senior class officers, and we discussed what they want to see. And I had some of my ideas, and they said, no, Mr. Foss, you're an old guy, that's not cool anymore, and they had their own ideas, and we went back and forth to determine what they were comfortable with, which also met the guidelines that the state has laid forth with us. So what this is a drive-in parking lot graduation ceremony. It will be held in the northeast lot. Every student, there's 117 graduating seniors, will be assigned a parking spot alphabetically. So they will come in and they will park in their assigned lot or their assigned spot. That spot will also have a number written on it, which corresponds to the number under their name. When they come in, we're going to have probably 8 staff members that will be floating in the parking lot as well as over on the other side to help direct traffic. It's extremely important that they get into their assigned parking spot because as we announce names, we're going to do it alphabetically. So the hardest part in this whole process is going to be getting them set in their alphabetical order. Once we have them parked, things are going to go without a hitch. Once they're there, we will have an opening speech, a welcome. We will also have our senior class president give her speech like we would in any other graduation ceremony. After that, we will recognize our top 10. We'll recognize our students who are entering the armed forces. And then we will do the distribution of diplomas. And how that works is there will be 4 rows in our parking lot. Cars will be dismissed by row, where they will go around to the east side, around to the north, and come back and park on the corner here. And they will wait until their name is read. When their name is read, the car will drive up to a table that has diplomas placed on them. They'll already have been sanitized when they were laid there. The graduate, and only the graduate, will get out of the car, walk to the table, take his or her diploma, and we will have a photographer there that will take a picture of them in their cap and gown taking their diploma. They will get back in the car. The car will drive to their original assigned parking space. We'll do that through all 117 graduates. At the end of that, we will announce the class of 2020, and we will then move on. I'm sure you guys have 100 questions, but what I want to say publicly to you as board members, which I know you already know, but also for anybody that's watching, this has probably been one of the most difficult professional or personal things I've had to do ever, and I would say that Mr. Sanju would be in that same boat. And the picture that I will paint for you is this. We have the government saying you can do these things, and we follow those guidelines. And then we have parents and seniors who want certain things over here. And with every part of my being, I want to give all of those things to them. These kids have earned this over the last 13 years in their education this day. Unfortunately, we can't. So we're kind of fighting that battle on both sides. And then when we come to, how does this look? We need to run it by the city, and we need to run it by the police department to make sure that we're also following the guidelines that they've been given with public gatherings. So for the last month, this has almost seemed like it's been, let's take 1 step forward and 7 steps backwards and figure out where we're at. And I want to apologize to the community because I know that they've been looking for guidance. I know that they've been looking for what does graduation look like. And I know that we are now less than 2 weeks away from that. But when we did give information, I wanted it to be complete information. I wanted to be able to answer any questions that they had. And I also wanted to be respectful of what is a very special day in the life of their kids and also of themselves. So this is what we came up with, and I will now let you guys ask all of the questions that I'm sure you have.
I'll just add just a couple of other things to it. When we went through this whole process, as Matt mentioned, we talked about balance and trying to make this, a very special experience for our students. It was difficult, but I think we're doing that. I think it's going to be special. I think it's going to be something that will be memorable, and it's going to work, and at the same time, it's going to follow the guidelines. When we went through this, we did check in with our liability company to make sure that what we're doing is also fits underneath the liability of our school, and the answer was yes, as long as you're staying within those guidelines. And so from that standpoint, we're okay with doing what we're doing. We're starting at 7:30 for the sole fact that it's going to be live on the radio. And Norwood Young America is also going to be on the radio, and so they're going to start at 6. And so that's where, typically we've always started at 7. We're pushing it back so that there is going to be 2 graduation ceremonies that are going to be live on the radio, which I think will really help in terms of broadcasting this to all the families that are either going to have their car on to listen to it. It will be both on 1310 AM and 96.1 FM, and or they can live stream it off of their phone. And so the audio piece of it, I think, is going to work out really well with the connection that we're going to have with our local radio station. Anything else that we've missed? I mean, probably a lot of details. So, like I said, we're going to send this letter out tomorrow to people. This is kind of the first that we've kind of, announced a little all the details of what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And I think it's going to be a great night.
So with regard to questions or discussion, let's since we're kind of in the graduation, kind of ending with, is that the end of your report, Mr. Foss? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so with having the graduation component be the last part of your presentation, let's start with questions regarding graduation. And then when we draw that to a close, then let's offer up any questions or concerns or comments about the grading piece, because I don't want that to be forgotten, because that was earlier in your presentation. But instead of multiple questions coming from many different directions on things, let's do the graduation one first, if that's all right.
That sounds good.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns about the graduation information presented?
I'll just make a comment. I don't have any questions on it. You guys handled it the way I felt it should be handled. Speaking to the seniors, speak to the parents. I felt right away I didn't need to be involved in it. If I had a student that was a senior, then I would have felt more like I should have been involved. But extremely difficult times. It'll be memorable. There'll be no doubt about that. So thank you for all your hard work and everybody what you guys all did.
Keep knocking on wood or anti-rain
Weather.
dances and all those types of things. Because if it is a downpour, we have mentioned that we're going to run it on Saturday, and we'll make that decision, fairly early on Friday morning. Because there's that level of, certainty, right? You have to ultimately tell everyone that you're going to be doing this. But we're hoping to have this happen, unless it's a monsoon. We're planning on having it on in May 29th.
Other questions, comments, concerns? I know Chris and I sat in on a lot of Zoom meetings with MSBA, and they had multiple guests that were bringing information to us. And a lot of that information was kind of waiting and seeing as well. From Commissioner of Education to the Governor to legal, from MSBA and various people. And I think, as Jason said, we all want the best for all of our graduating classes, and obviously 2020 is no exception. And Mr. Foss mentioned that as well. One of the things that came out during the MSBA, one of the meetings, one of the Zooms, was the question that the board should be asking, which is, are the guidelines being followed in preparing this plan? And what I hear you saying is that the plan, the guidelines put forth by the Department of Health factored into and guided the plan. So the plan as is presented here fulfills all of the guidelines as presented by the Department of Health for Minnesota. Is that correct?
It does. There was a 3-page document that was released to us about graduation ceremonies, and there was a couple of ways you could do it. If people want to have windows down, they can be parked certain spaces away from each other, and we just decided that the way we're going to do is windows will be up, but we're going to allow students to get out, but it'll be a contactless delivery of diplomas. So it's going to be strange, but we're not going to get to physically hand it to them. We're not going to get to shake hands, but that is what allows us to have the students get out of the car for that brief amount of time to have a picture taken and obtaining their diploma.
Some other information that was shared in the Zoom meeting as well for other board members just to be aware of is questions that the board should be asking would be also our legal has been contacted with regard to our plan to make sure that it fulfills the meeting of the guidelines.
We checked in
for
with our
liability.
insurance company, and their insurance company said we are covered.
Okay. Another question that came up at the Zoom meeting with MSBA was contacting the law enforcement entities of our community, meaning probably McLeod County as well as Glencoe PD. That's been done as well I'm assuming, is that correct?
That is correct.
Fair to say that they've been contacted and the plan has been shared with them, or they've had input into the meeting of the plan so that it's safe from a law enforcement standpoint. And well, let me pause there for a second, and that's been taken care of as well. They've been contacted, been part of the plan.
We've had a lot of conversations with Jim Rader from the Glencoe Police Department, and matter of fact, before I left school this afternoon here, I called him and basically went over this exact letter and said, Jim, I know we've talked about a lot of these things already, but before I present this to the board tonight, I want to make sure that you're comfortable with the things that I'm bringing forward, and he is. So they're very well versed in what the expectation is.
Okay. Another piece that came from the meeting was the enforcement of the plan. So our plan is fulfilling all of the guidelines that have been set forth by the Department of Health. What happens when or if the plan, I don't want to say goes awry, but if individuals that are participating in the event start to breach the guidelines as set forth by the Department of Health and what our expectations are as a GSL school district, who will be doing, or how will the enforcement of the guidelines and our plan happen?
That's where it gets a little sticky, and that's part of the conversation I had with Officer Jim Rader today too. Obviously, they're here to support us and what we need. They're going to be here if we have any problems, but what my hope is that our families are going to be respectful. And the first option is going to be if there's an individual or there's a family that's not following these guidelines, we're going to stop the ceremony until they can get back into those guidelines, or the Glencoe Police Department will be contacted. It's my hope that between tomorrow and the graduation day, I'm going to have pretty constant contact with them, and I'm going to be pretty clear with what needs to happen, and I would hope that the families can be respectful of that. And if they have questions or concerns ahead of time, I've had my email and my phone number listed here. They can get a hold of me and we can work through those things. But I would hope that our community and our family, and I know they will be respectful of these 117 graduates that we're going to have.
And that has been discussed with our liability individuals as well, you said?
Well, even on those Zoom calls that we had, you can't predict what people are going to do. They said there's how do you stop somebody from doing it? But our answer is please follow the guidelines of what we've laid out, and I guess I expect our families to cooperate respectfully.
And that's the message that we're giving as a GSL school district is the cooperation that we're wanting to make this memorable and to make this special for our graduates is exactly that. And I know that with the emotions and excitement of the event, things can, happen, and we just want to once again be very safe in providing what we're providing. And like I said, these are questions that came up in the MSBA Zoom meeting. That enforcement piece, if things are not followed as far as the guidelines and the liability that a district can be held responsible for is extremely important in the planning, the proactive planning of the ultimate plan that the district puts forth. Other questions, comments, concerns?
And I'll just echo on the the details that we've put together on this, I think, allows for a really well thought out, detailed, organized plan, which I think will aid in the fact that things will go smooth.
One other thing that was mentioned during the MSBA meeting too was the equity piece, and with a parking lot ceremony, the assumption that everyone has a car or everyone has transportation to the event. I'm hoping that that's been
addressed in our letter.
addressed.
Yep.
Other questions, comments, concerns? I know you mentioned the weather. If it rains, if it's humid and 100 degrees, will windows be up or windows be down?
Windows have to be up.
Yep, that's the right answer.
But you can run your car because, you're not broadcasting in terms of amplification of your ceremony. It's all, they're going to be listening in the car through either, phones or their own radio station. So there's no need for that, quietness of cars and that kind of stuff where you would amplify your sound. That's the positive approach of why we went through the radio station. So it'll work.
And that has worked really well. I've attended a few church services the same way. Easter service, it was snowing like a banshee, and everyone in the parking lot there, we were parked side by side, and the car horns went off when they, it was actually a neat experience, but it was, as far as sound and listening, actually was better with the windows shut. And if it gets hot out, you have air conditioning on, so
We're asking families to, they can certainly respectfully decorate their car with the name of their graduate. That'll help identify people as they come through. They can't have an RV. They can't have a flatbed truck. It has to be a vehicle, that's your standard vehicle that fits in the parking spot. That's been addressed. The letter has specifically talks about that. I think we've covered almost every detail that we can in terms of the what if scenarios that we've gone through. I think it's well thought out, and like I said before, I think our families will be respectful.
Is it one car
Per family.
per graduate? What if
Correct.
you have a broken one? Like,
One car per family.
so they're either going to have to
Yep.
sort things out?
And again, that's one of those guidelines from the state that have said that's what you get.
And a limit to the number?
Well, I mean, if you have an SUV and have 7 seats, you could theoretically have 7 people in your family. And they're saying, I mean, this is where the whole thing starts to open up, but they're saying you need to make sure that as a family, you're adhering by the guidelines. If you're sick, under the weather, all that kind of stuff, they have asked you to stay home. Your family should be the people that are in the car. So we're hoping and expecting our families to adhere by that.
So I do have to bring up a concern, only because I can relate to a broken, blended family. We do possibly have families where mom and dad are not amicable, and having one vehicle is maybe not a possibility. So I do think we would need, if somebody approached us or approached you guys regarding having a second vehicle so both mom and dad can attend, I think we do need to be open to that. I don't think it's fair to pick, for them to have to decide who attends, or it can be a very uncomfortable situation for them to have to be in one vehicle. I do know other local schools are,
Sure.
offering a second parking spot, but windows are still up. Graduate remains in one car, but at least, both mom and dad or both sets of parents are able to attend. So I guess I would recommend that there is some case-by-case consideration if that were to arise and not be a possibility.
Sure. We just don't, one of the things is you don't know where that line is, and we can work on case-by-case things,
Yeah.
assuming that you'll be able to accommodate, but then,
No, and I understand, yes.
so, yeah, obviously, we work with families as best that we possibly can.
I would just encourage families, once again, when the plan is presented out to the public, I encourage families to be in contact with Mr. Sanju or Mr. Foss with questions that they have. And this isn't, to put any pressure or anything upon those guys, but I would rather have the community ask the questions ahead of time so that administration has time to address those questions or give thought to the fulfilling and the meeting of these guidelines that we're bound by, so that instead of just taking for granted or making the decision as a family or making the decision the day of or an hour before, once this plan is put out to the public, that once again questions are shared ahead of time with administration so that the answers can be given and that solutions can be found. And I think Alicia brings up a good point as an example of a possible question that the community members could have. Other questions or comments or concerns?
Are you as a board comfortable in allowing certain families to have more than one vehicle?
Where would you draw the line? Can you say, okay, for you guys it's all right, for you guys it's not? It's a double-edged sword there, and I don't envy you guys for anything for that, because it is a tough decision to make, and I didn't mean a negative thing when I said broken home, but like you said, a blended family. They are out there, and maybe mom, you would hope that mom and dad could set those differences aside for one night. This is your kid, so maybe put those things away for one night to make it special, but not everybody can, and so
The reason I ask, and I also, my oldest, it's a blended home, I 100% relate. The guidelines we were given is one vehicle per family. So that's why I asked the question, are you as a board comfortable if I make that judgment and a family reaches out and says, I can't be in this vehicle for this reason, could we come in another vehicle? We have the space, we have plenty of additional spaces, but again, it starts to open a gray area. I'm comfortable in fielding those conversations and making those decisions, but I want to know that you as a board support that.
So my question to that would be, if the answer to that question is yes, as a majority of the board being in favor of that, that is a breach then of what the guidelines are. And then my question would be, what does that do for the liability part? Because as soon as we deviate from the guidelines,
You
it
keep opening
makes
up
it
a little bit more and
makes
more.
the district vulnerable.
But yeah, and that's, what was the term, Jamie, they used in the risk management? It's
Yeah.
the risk management of things, and when you ask the question to your insurance company, their answer is you're fine, follow the guidelines, and you're fine. With any of this stuff, these guidelines, there's an amount of risk that you're going to take. The easiest thing that we could do is to not have a ceremony, because then there's no risk. There's not going to be any liability. Well, I don't know if anybody in this room recommends that. I know I'm not. I want to do whatever I can for these kids. But even having the ceremony, following the guidelines, you're opening yourself up to risk. But that risk management is smaller because you're following guidelines. These aren't rules, they're not laws, they're guidelines. If you keep opening yourself up to it, you increase your risk management. And those are those balancing acts that you ultimately need to make decisions. And we'll make those decisions. We'll do it as best that we possibly can. We'll make it work. That's what we try to do. But just so you know that when you keep doing these things that open up your risk, you keep opening up more and more risks that you have. And so
You're stating it very well. I mean,
I don't know what else to tell you.
No, you're right. I mean, you're stating it very well, and risk management is exactly what MSBA continued to come back with over and over. And there is that risk management, or there is that risk as soon as you do have any form of an in-person ceremony. And that's why...
that's why, we were also part of this plan. This is a nice segue. We were also part of this plan wanting to, kind of do a processional, i.e. parade. I don't want to use that word, but a processional down 16th Street with our graduates. And we worked with the city, and we're going to try to have some of the representation with fire trucks from other communities. And in the end, our city said no to us. You can't do that. Why? Risk management. So we get it. I could sit here and say I was disappointed because it would have been nice finishing touch, those types of things. But, in reality, it's not any different than what we're doing with this graduation ceremony, and every little thing that we try to do, you open up that risk. We think that we're finding that balance, and I think we're going to do that very well. I think there needs to be a level of trust that we're going to do those things as best that we can, and in the end, it's going to work out. I wish I could predict the future. I can't predict if people are going to jump out of their cars and give each other high fives and do things that they're not supposed to do. All I can do is plan and prepare, and I think that we're doing that.
My suggestion, I think, for that situation, I think what Alicia kind of touched on, the only time that I would see that there would be a problem or an issue with two parents being in the same vehicle that are no longer together would be if there's an order of protection involved. Then they physically and legally cannot be in that same vehicle. And that, I don't know if you could use the word, it's not fair to them, but the parents of blended families, or, when there's two parents no longer together, they have to be adult about the situation and decide what they're going to do. In the situation of the order of protection, being that we do have some room in the back row, I would suggest that if that is the case, and only in that case, if there's an order of protection or something like that, then that other parent could be parked in that row back there, but not drive through in the procession to get the diploma, because their child won't be in that vehicle. I mean, if they want to be parked in the back row and watch it and listen on the radio, that would be fine in that situation. But I would suggest that would be the only reason. And if they can't sit in the same car for how long this is going to last, an hour together to support their child, then that's a decision they have to make together. But otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people going, well, I want to have my mom and dad with me too, but they can't be in the same car. Well, if they physically can't, or if they can't be in the same car because they can't get along, that's their problem they need to deal with. But in an order protection situation, then the law's involved, and even if the parents would agree to do it, they still can't. So that would be my suggestion, is only if they have that order of protection in place.
We had this conversation when we were planning and doing those things, and that's why we came up with the one vehicle, because of the thing opening up. And again, we'll handle those cases, I think, and do a good job of handling those cases. Whether it's a fair analogy or not, we have families that we deliver lunch to, and it's on a case-by-case basis. We kind of filter that out. But if we would open that up to everyone, who would not want their lunch delivered to them every single day, right? How easy would that be? It would be a really nice convenience. So that's why, we're doing what we're doing. And we've handled that on a case-by-case basis, and I think we're gonna need to do the same with this approach and really try to filter it. And those suggestions right there allow us to have a, kind of a black and white rule that allows you to have the exception, so to speak. But I think that we'll be able to take care of that, and I appreciate the insight.
I think you articulated that well. I think that, it boils down to the law versus choice. And a case-by-case basis, I think, once again, makes us vulnerable and opens us up. So I think following the guideline, I'm going to keep going back to following the guidelines, which is what this plan is doing, needs to be what guides the district in the decisions that may come up from questions that are going to be offered to you, is continue to go back to the guidelines and follow the guidelines, because that's going to keep us as a district less risk management and less vulnerable. And, other questions, concerns, comments? Thank you for all the time that you've put into, waiting and waiting some more, and then waiting some more for information from the state. Thank you also, Mr. Sanju, Mr. Foss, for gathering information from the seniors themselves and their families, involving the community with regard to law enforcement. Continue to have those conversations with them leading up to the event, and ask those tough questions of law enforcement as far as the enforcement of the guidelines and what their plans are ahead of time, so that they've thought it through as well, and thinking about what level of enforcing and what that looks like, what that would be if the case arises. I know that on the Zoom with MSBA, one of the individuals that was participating was from Duluth, I believe, and they've already had some of their graduation ceremonies, and they had a similar type of event, in-person event. And one of the Duluth individuals was saying that they had the best laid plans and stuff too, and there were violations. People started to get out of the car because of emotions and excitement, and wanting pictures taken and stuff like that. And once again, best laid plans, but it was something that was shared, and I'm sure that Duluth School District had high expectations and stuff for their students and families too, but sometimes emotions and excitement run wild. So let's not run wild, but let's celebrate the class of 2020 in a positive manner, in a safe manner. Any other questions or concerns or comments? Okay.
Go back to the grading?
Yeah, I think we're ready for that conversation with regard to the grading. Mr. Foss, Mr. Sanju, are you okay with moving on to that?
That's fine, or I could give my report and you guys could ask questions on grading, because it is an agenda item. And the reason why it's an agenda item is because that was also, from these calls and these places that we're going, if you're making any type of changes to any types of handbook or policy, that it should be in front of the board. And so we do have this as an agenda item.
Okay.
I don't know if it would make just sense to do it at that time.
When would you like to address the questions, Mr. Foss? Do you want to have it now as part of your report, or do you want to wait until it comes up in the agenda? Board, do you have any?
I think if you want to do it now, that way if you have more questions later, you can ask. Otherwise, I'm ready to answer anything you have.
Okay. Board, thoughts?
Well, I got two things, so why don't we just get the meeting started and go forward?
So you want to have it as an agenda? I mean,
Yes.
discuss it during the agenda?
No.
Okay. John, are you okay waiting for that? Mr. Foster, you okay too?
Yep, I'm good.
Okay.
I can be real quick.
All right. Mr. Sanju, your report.
Well, again, most of my items have been discussed, and all the things you can kind of picture a little bit. One of the things that I just wanted to quickly acknowledge is to say thank you to our families. The patience with the information. We've been trying to provide a lot of information, and at the same time, when you provide a lot of information, some people say you're providing a lot of information, then you don't get the information to them because you're providing so much information, if that makes any sense. But they have been wonderful, they've been patient, and they've been very cooperative, as a whole with everything. The other thing that I've been getting a lot, and I'm just going to address it, and we'll talk a little bit more about this June, July, is what's going to look like in the fall. We don't know, and people have asked those questions, and just to publicly talk a little bit about what the fall is going to look like. I don't know what the fall is going to look like, and we're just going to have to kind of keep maintaining and keep planning and keep preparing. We have had lots of meetings about what the fall will look like and how that's going to look like. And again, we're going to be getting more information from the state, but I just want to be able to hope that we'll be back to quote unquote normal in the fall, but we don't know if that's going to happen or not. I do want to acknowledge all of the people that participated in the tour of the towns. It was a wonderful celebration of our teachers and our students, and just say thank you to all the people that participated in that. And then just like I said, we'll get moving. I just also want to acknowledge Terry. Not only has he been here to help us out a little bit, but Terry is working on putting a virtual tour of our schools. One things that have been missed is all the transition, second to third, right? 6th grade to 7th grade, our new students going into the high school. And we've always had, during the month of May, our transition time where those kids get to come up to or move that next level and tour the facility, go through lunch, do all that type of stuff, and that's not happening. And so hopefully this small little step will be able to provide our families so that if they have a student that has never been to Lakeside, and of course we'll be able to do open houses and do those things that are closer. But doing it in the spring has been really successful as well. But being able to share those videos of walking into our building and where things are at and being able to have a virtual tour of our facilities, I think is going to be a really neat thing for our families. And so thanks to Terry for doing all that kind of stuff. And then the last thing I want to say is thank you. Our senior awards banquet also is not happening. That's something that, as you see in the background, has been getting put together virtually, and they're gonna send that out on the 27th, and that's that awards ceremony where not only do they get awards that they have earned, but they also give the scholarships away. And I just want to say a special thank you when you look at the list of scholarship winners and the dollar amounts that come around to that. Once again, it's second to none with schools our size, with the amount of money that has been given to our kids. So thank you to all the sponsors of those scholarships, and congratulations to all the scholarship winners. Thank you.
Thank you. Terry, a quick question for you. The virtual tour and stuff, that's going to be on the website?
No, it's going to be on our YouTube channel. Actually, it was put up there today.
Was it today? I haven't seen it yet.
Yeah.
I know you gave us a little clips here and there.
Yeah, I had a difficult time. The custodial staff's been really on the ball with cleaning out rooms, and it's been hard. I've had to edit, and I'm going to make another one that's better later when things quiet down.
Okay. It made me think of it would be nice to have that virtual tour of our GSL school district that is available to families that move into the community that are...
Yeah, there's going to be multiple reasons for it.
Yeah, multiple reasons and multiple uses for it. So as you're creating it, I think that, this is one reason we're doing it, but what it might look like or the use of it for families that are shopping around, that are coming to the district or one of the communities of GSL and wanting to just kind of tour it privately, but, once again, virtually, that might be kind of fun for them to be able to do as well and be a nice showcase for the district. Thank you for doing that. Thank you for highlighting it, Mr. Sancho. Committee reports. Are there any committee reports? All right.
That's right, you're our secretary.
No committee reports.
We've got it on.
Got it all planned, don't ya?
Approve the agenda. Action item. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second?
Questions or comments? Let's see. I have a motion by Jason and a second by John to approve the agenda as listed. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Approve the consent agenda. Action item enclosure number 1. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Questions or comments? I have a motion by Alicia and a second by Donna to approve the consent agenda. Enclosure number 1 is listed. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Old business, there's none at this time. New business. Item A, Lincoln and Lakeside Elementary grades K-6 grading modifications. Action item. Principal Butler recommends approving the grade modifications that are documented during the time period of March 16th through May 28th, 2020, reflect the distance learning period resulting from COVID-19 pandemic. Future use of these grades for academic placement, acceleration, or remediation is disencouraged and are only to be used with caution after balancing the information against student performance and other grading periods. And you can see that pass would be a P, indicates that the student met basic learning expectations during distance learning. An in progress or IP recognizes that students did not have uniform access to school-based support systems during distance learning. Progress toward learning mastery will continue in the next grade level. Before I take a motion and a second, Mr. Butler, did you want to share some additional information with us?
Yes, I do. You know, we had many thoughtful discussions around grading, worked with MDE and some principal advocates throughout the state, and really wanted to reflect more of a growth mindset. So many of the models we saw were pass and incomplete. When we saw that incomplete, to me that was kind of it was a wall. You're finished, you didn't accomplish what you needed to. The thought is that in progress shows a growth mindset, what we're going to do when we get the kids back. Title boot camp, for example. You know, how are we going to benchmark next year? In progress, meaning that we're going to get the kids where they are, and then move them and get them back up to grade level.
Questions or comments? Thank you for the thoughtfulness put into this, and once again, I know that the Department of Education provided a document 12 to 18 pages long and many different scenarios, many different pieces of data to look at, and I know that you and others have looked at all of that, and once again, it's really looking to keep the kids without harm, and also a communication piece, communicating the accurate ability that their child has at this particular moment in time. So trying to blend those things together as far as communicating accurately the progress the child is making, and also keeping them harmless, I should say, in the distance learning is quite the balancing act. So thank you for your thoughtfulness and the connectedness that you've had with peers to come up with what you're presenting tonight.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion? I'll make that motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any other questions or comments? I have a motion by Jamie and a second by Jason to approve the grading modifications for Lincoln and Lakeside Elementary during the time period of March 16th, 2020 through May 28th, 2020. Any final discussion or comments? Mr. Butler, one last question. I know that this is just through May 28th, 2020. and of course the unknown of the fall and what that's going to look like. The grading would be, is it fair to say, revisited during the summer or fall leading into the beginning of the next school year or early into the next school year, so that staff and families know, as well as the kids know, what expectations they're going to have with regard to grading?
Definitely would be revisited, and then communication would be made. So we're looking forward to that guidance that we get from MDE,
Okay,
hopefully in June.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Butler. Item B, junior and senior high grading modifications action item. Principal Foss recommends approving the grading systems that was created by Equitable Grading Systems during COVID-19, provided by the Minnesota Department of Education. The board-approved change in grading is only effective for trimester 3 of the 2019-2020 school year. For grades 7 through 12, grading would be A minus, B plus, B minus, C plus, C, and C minus with a GPA. Passing, marked as a P, with credit for students with 1% to 69% during distance learning. No grade or NG, no credit for students who did not complete any assignment during distance learning. Before I take a motion in a second, any other information that you wanted to share, Mr. Foss?
The only thing that I want to clarify is that with the passing or P, that would not have a GPA associated with it.
Would it still be with credit?
It would be
With credit.
but no GPA associated.
Okay, yeah. So the GPA is just A through C minus. Passing is with credit for students 1% through 69% during distance learning with no GPA attached.
Correct.
Yeah, thank you.
And then also just to specify, this is for, I think I had on the top, that this is only effective for tri-free.
Correct.
This will be revisited in the fall if we were to extend distance learning.
Similar to an MOU with a sunset.
Any other questions or comments?
We're supposed to answer questions now before we have the motion and the second, or are we going to go forward for discussion afterwards?
Well, we can take questions or comments now if you want.
I just want to ask and make sure I seen it, I read it here, that it says it's only going to be for tri-3. When you made first presentation, you said the exclusions of the first 2 weeks. So it's not completely tri-3, or is it concluding those first 2 weeks?
Basically what that means is with the 1% to 69%, if we included those first 2 weeks, every student in the school would pass because they all were in class and all submitted something within those first 2 weeks.
Okay.
So this is really looking at what they've done for the other 7 weeks that we've been distance learning.
Okay. And then you answered my question with the pass, with the credit and no GPA. You answered that. You had just answered that, so I apologize. I didn't. But thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Is there a motion? Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Other questions or comments? I have a motion by Alicia and a second by Jason to approve the grading modifications for junior senior high effective only for trimester 3 of the 2019-2020 school year. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Mr. Foss, just as I thanked Mr. Butler, I want to thank you as well for your thoughtfulness put into the grading modifications for trimester 3 and the work that you and your peers put forth in sifting through all the Department of Education 12 to 18 page document and so on, and keeping the students harm-free, at the same time being able to accurately communicate to families the progress that their children are making or have made during that trimester 3 of distance learning. So thank you for your work involved with that as well.
Thank you for your support. I'm going to step out so Michelle can come back in. You guys have a great night. If you have any questions for me, call, email, or stop in. So thank you.
Thank you. You have a nice evening as well. Item C, second reading of policies, action item. The following policies received their first reading at the February 10th board meeting. It is a recommendation of the Policy Committee, Directors Lemke and Lockhart, and the Superintendent of Schools to adopt these policies. Is there a motion?
So
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? I have a motion by Jason and a second by Alicia to adopt the policies listed above. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Item D, resolution to accept donations. Action item is the recommendation of Superintendent Sanju to adopt the resolution to accept donations. Is there a motion? I'll make that motion. Is there a second? Questions or comments?
I just want to make one comment on donations. The one for McLeod Co-op Power is going to the STEM trip. Just so everybody understands with the STEM trip that the donations were all, like the ones that were given, the STEM coordinator was asking everybody if they still wanted to donate to the trip because technically this year the trip is canceled. But we're still planning on doing it for next year. And so it gave everybody that option if they wanted to either retract or, I don't know, Michelle, did we have anybody retract? I don't think we did we?
I haven't yet, the ones that I reached out to, and this advisor was making some of her own calls.
Yep.
The one thing we ran into is most of these groups haven't been able to meet. So when I called like the Legion, our contact person says, oh, I'm sure it's fine that you keep it in their fund for next year or whatever, but I have to bring it up to the full group, and they haven't met, because most of them don't do Zoom meetings, so they're waiting to meet. So that was the response I got from quite a few of the Lions, the Silver Lake groups as well. So that was kind of their consensus, but they still have to meet and present it to the full group. So but we have been reaching out to all those donations, like I had mentioned last month.
Yeah, you mentioned it last month that was going to, take place, and if the entity still wants to continue with their donation as stated, we would be able to earmark it and keep it in a place value or a line item, if you will, for that event that they're designating, correct?
Yeah, what we're doing on our spreadsheet, that I made a note, contacted them, they said keep the money in their account, apply it towards next year donations, so they might not give again next spring, because they gave now, it wasn't used, so, yeah, we'll keep track of all that.
Yeah, thanks for reporting that out to us. Any other questions or comments? I have a motion by Jamie and a second by Donna to accept the donations as listed. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you to the McLeod Cooperative Power and Plato Fire Department for their donations. Greatly appreciated by the district and the students of the district for the events that they have designated them for. Item E, miscellaneous. There's none at this time. Adjournment, action item. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Can I just make one real quick comment? One of the things that you've seen Michelle and Bill and Matt do is they've been going in and out. It's because of the 10 person, and I just want to make reference to that so that people are aware that we are also following the guidelines that have been given by the state in terms of those meetings, and that's why you see them going in and out so that we can keep the number here at 10.
Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? I have a motion by Jason and a second by Alicia to adjourn our meeting at 8:25 p.m. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Motion carries. We're adjourned.